The question of how Michael Afton survives after being used as a living disguise by Ennard at the end of Five Nights at Freddy, sister location is one of the most unsettling and debated mysteries in the entire series. What makes it so compelling is that the game presents something that appears biologically impossible, a human being hollowed out, puppeteered, and then discarded, yet somehow continuing to move, speak, and exist afterward. To understand this, you have to look at the intersection of the series, internal logic, where science, possession, and something far more abstract blend together, and the thematic role Michael plays in the broader narrative. When Ennard enters Michael's body, it is not simply a case of possession in the traditional ghostly sense. Ennard is a physical amalgamation of animatronic parts, wires, and endoskeleton components, controlled by multiple consciousnesses that originated from trapped souls. By entering Michael, Ennard effectively converts him into a living shell, using his outer appearance to pass as human. Over time, however, Michael's body begins to decay. This is shown through his progressively discolored skin and unnatural posture, suggesting that his internal organs are either removed or no longer functioning. In realistic biological terms, this would result in immediate death. Yet the world of Five Nights at Freddy's has always operated under a different set of rules, where emotion, memory, and remnant, an in-universe substance tied to soul energy, can sustain what should not be sustained. The key idea behind Michael's survival lies in this concept of remnant and spiritual persistence. His survival is not because his body continues to function normally, but because something else is animating him after Ennard leaves. When Ennard abandons the body, ejecting itself into the sewers, Michael collapses, seemingly lifeless. Then, in a moment that reframes everything, he rises again. This implies that whatever force allowed Ennard to control him has left behind a residue, or perhaps awakened something latent within him. Michael does not simply return to life as a normal human, he becomes something closer to the animatronics themselves, a being sustained not by conventional biology, but by an unnatural fusion of body and soul. There is also the matter of Michael's connection to William Afton, his father. William is heavily implied to have experimented with remnant and the manipulation of life and death, discovering ways to bind consciousness to machinery and prolong existence beyond physical limits. If Michael was exposed to these experiments, directly or indirectly, it is plausible that his body had already been altered before the events of sister location. This would mean that when Ennard used him, it was not entering an ordinary human vessel, but one that was already capable of sustaining abnormal conditions. In this interpretation, Michael's survival is less a miracle and more the result of prior tampering. He was already halfway between life and something else. Another layer to consider is the symbolic dimension of his survival. Michael's continued existence after being emptied and discarded reflects a recurring theme in Five Nights at Freddy, the inability to escape consequences. He is in many ways a walking corpse, forced to confront and undo the damage caused by his family. His survival is not presented as a blessing, but as a burden. The unnatural state he exists in mirrors the trapped spirits inhabiting the animatronics, suggesting that he has become one of them in all but form. He is no longer fully human, yet not entirely mechanical either, existing in a liminal space that defines much of the series' horror. There is also an important distinction between possession and animation. In many cases within the series, animatronics are driven by spirits seeking closure or revenge. Michael's case is different. After Ennard leaves, there is no clear indication that another spirit takes control of his body. Instead, it seems that his own consciousness persists, but is now untethered from the normal requirements of a living organism. This raises the possibility that remnant does not merely house souls, but can sustain them independently of organic systems. Michael may be alive in the sense that his mind remains intact, but his body functions more like a vessel powered by that remnant energy rather than by blood, oxygen, or cellular activity. The visual storytelling reinforces this interpretation. His purple, decaying appearance evokes the imagery of something preserved beyond death, similar to how the animatronics themselves house remnants of the past. Yet he is still able to speak and act with intent, particularly in his later monologue, where he declares his mission to find his father. This clarity of purpose suggests that his survival is not random, but tied to narrative necessity. He continues because he has something left to do, echoing the idea that in this universe, willpower and unresolved purpose can anchor a being to existence even after the body should have failed. The idea that remnant entered Michael Afton and allowed him to continue existing after being emptied by Ennard is one of the most coherent ways to explain what would otherwise be completely impossible. In the world of Five Nights at Freddy's, remnant is not just a vague supernatural force. It behaves almost like a bridge between physical matter and consciousness. It can bind a soul to metal, preserve awareness after death, and even animate objects that should be inert. When you apply that framework to Michael's situation, his survival begins to look less like a miracle and more like the unintended consequence of exposure to a powerful substance. While Ennard is inside Michael, his body is not simply being worn like clothing, it is being actively integrated with a structure that is saturated with remnant. Ennard itself is composed of multiple animatronics, each tied to lingering consciousnesses and emotional energy. That means Michael's internal environment, for however long Ennard occupies him, is in constant contact with remnant-infused components. If remnant can seep into metal and give it life, there is no reason it could not also seep into organic tissue, especially tissue that has been hollowed out and altered. Another important aspect is how remnant seems to respond to emotion and will. Throughout Five Nights at Freddy's, it is not just the presence of a soul that matters, but the intensity of unresolved purpose. Michael has a clear motivation that emerges after his survival. He wants to find his father and set things right. That kind of determination may play a role in anchoring his consciousness to his body. If remnant is partially shaped by emotional energy, then Michael's will to continue could be what prevents him from fadding, effectively locking him into existence, even when his physical form can no longer support life on its own. The visual decay of Michael's body actually strengthens this interpretation rather than contradicting it. His purple, deteriorating appearance suggests that his body is not healing or regenerating in a normal way. Instead, it is being preserved in a state of controlled ruin. Remnant does not restore him to life as he was. It holds him together just enough to function. This aligns with how animatronics in the series often appear damaged, yet remain active. The sustaining force is not concerned with restoring natural life, only with maintaining enough structure for consciousness to persist. There is also a disturbing implication in how this changes what Michael is. If remnant is what keeps him moving, then he is no longer fully human in the traditional sense. He is something closer to the very things he once feared, sharing their unnatural persistence and their detachment from normal biological limits. His survival is not a return to life, but a transformation into a different state of being, one that exists because remnant has effectively replaced the role of his missing organs and failing systems. In the end, Michael Afton survives not because the rules of biology allow it, but because the rules of Five Nights at Freddy's demand it. He is sustained by a mixture of remnant, prior experimentation, and sheer narrative weight. His body is effectively dead, but his consciousness refuses to fade, resulting in a state that is both horrifying and tragic. He becomes a living contradiction, a man who has been hollowed out, worn like a costume, and discarded, yet still walks forward with intention. That contradiction is precisely what makes his survival so disturbing, and why it remains one of the most memorable moments in the series.